In the last video, I explained through examples of my own experiences how Medicare is a failure. I explained how over the last 7 years, my debilitating condition of constant dizziness, nausea, and headaches has gone untreated because of the constant refusal of the medical industry to provide me with medical care, and how Medicare has played a major role in creating a dysfunctional medical system. It's not fair to say that America's medical system is broken. It's not broken. It is fair to say that for many Americans, there is no medical system, and that's with Medicare. After my first experience in frustration trying to report medical provider fraud to Medicare 25 years ago, I stopped issuing Medicare complaints, though I had many, until just about 2 years ago when something happened that compelled me to try again. After moving from LA, I had one of my extreme dizzy attacks that laid me up for over a week. So I once again proceeded to pursue medical treatment for this horrible and still untreated condition. Now, I've had major medical problems since being a baby, and I'm well versed in medical etiquette and terminology. So when I called the only local clinic in the area, I requested an appointment with a general practitioner for a complete physical with an emphasis on my dizziness. I was told no problem, and not to eat for 12 hours because blood was to be drawn for testing. When a lady entered the exam room, I asked her, "Are you the doctor?" She said, "No, I'm a nurse practitioner." That meant nothing more to me than that she was a nurse, and I proceeded to respond to her as I would to any nurse pre-interview before the doctor's exam. In about 20 minutes' time, she refused to let me tell her my medical history, refused to believe my current condition, and then she put her hands on me and started poking around. All the while, I was wondering when the doctor exam was going to begin. I even asked several times during this 20 minutes, "When is the doctor coming?" She completely ignored me. She was mean, malicious, and criminally negligent. She left, and I thought, finally, the doctor will be here next. But I was wrong. The nurse returned with a handful of papers, and I immediately asked again, "When am I going to see the doctor?" She said, "Doctor? There's no doctor here. This is all you get." And she handed me about 7 written referrals. I said, "What am I supposed to do with these papers?" She responded, "Do what you want with them. You're on Medi-Medi. Go where you want." She even had the gall to issue a malicious misdiagnosis of schizophrenia. It was obvious this false diagnosis was just to cover her own ass for any complaints that I might report. When I was in the waiting room, there were several signs on the walls informing me of their complaint process. First, notify the clinic manager. So I immediately left the exam room in search of this manager person, and of course, she wasn't there. So I got the hell out of that hellhole as quickly as my feet would take me. Yet another doctor appointment, and still no physical, no tests, and no treatment. Over 7 years, and countless doctors, clinics, and hospitals, and still no medical care. This local clinic committed fraud. I never agreed to go to that clinic unless I'd be examined by a doctor. I wouldn't even have been there if I knew there'd be no doctor there. I never consented to let that nurse speak to or touch me unless a doctor exam was to follow. I was lured to that clinic under false pretenses. That's called misrepresentation and fraud. These are crimes. And the nurse committed assault and battery. As soon as I asked that nurse, upon her entering the exam room, if she was a doctor, it was mandatory that she explain to me there was no doctor there at all. At that moment, she knew I was expecting to see a doctor, but violated full disclosure. And from that moment on, every time she talked to me, every time she touched me, it was without my consent. She committed criminal malicious misdiagnosis, criminal molestation, and criminal assault and battery. But this is America, and the law protects criminal medical actions. No x-rays were done, no physical was done, and no blood was drawn. Why was I told not to eat for 12 hours? I never pay a medical clinic to see a nurse, and I never pay a clinic to receive a bunch of worthless referrals. Several days later, when I finally got a hold of the clinic manager by phone, she even committed fraud by telling me general practitioners are nurses. They aren't, and never have been. And the state of California has no complaint process. Reporting patient fraud was easy as hell, but reporting provider fraud was impossible. I literally called at least 10 phone numbers, and no one would let me report provider fraud. It was just a referral mill of phone numbers. Everyone I called told me to call someone else. So I turned to Medi-Care, and they put their complaint process into the hands of a private company. Livanta took 7 months to respond, and again, they ended up supporting my medical abusers who committed Medicare fraud. Livanta's processor told me the clinic had 2 months to respond or the findings would go my way by default. But the investigator never read my complaint. The processor reworded it. The investigator addressed the wrong issues and allowed the clinic over 7 months to respond. I was told by the processor that if the clinic responded fraudulently, which they did, I needed to contact the office of the Inspector General about that fraud. So I did. Another private company called Nordian intercepted this complaint and refused to do anything to interfere with the criminal fraud committed by the clinic. These private companies defend and cover for one another. In the name of private enterprise, these government-contracted private companies cover the fraud of the profiteering medical industry, and that's their only purpose: to side with the profiteers and cover up all criminal activities. Not to stop Medicare fraud, abuse, and theft, but to cover it up. About a year later, after yet another extreme attack of dizziness, vomiting, and headaches, I had no choice but to go to an emergency room that refused me treatment, saying I needed to go to my primary doctor. After raising hell and explaining how I was just recently denied my right to see a doctor and how other doctors keep denying me treatment, the emergency room doctors and administrators told me, "Tough shit. Then I guess you're just out of luck. You're on your own." And they escorted me out of the medical facility. And they were paid too. It's very unjust indeed when our corrupt elite rulers can force us to pay for things, but won't force the people who take our money to give us anything of value in return. What we need as a species is our human rights protected, not more dysfunctional government programs. Practitioner fraud and abuse, the reduction of medical care, and the denial of medical care are all rampant under Medi-Care. And I keep hearing the predatory liberal elite applaud this goddamn mess as a successful governmental program. Equalism has a better way. In the next video, entitled Equalism 109D, I'll explain how equalism will provide medical care to all citizens without predatory corruption through profit motives and without the oppression of non-functioning government programs. Please share this video series with as many equalists, non-predators, as possible. Thanks.